staying healthy, staying sexy, staying young is what living life is all about. And if you have doctors that have proven treatments that keep people young and healthy so they don't get sick, you want people to know about these treatments and that they exist.
This is Mark L. White for Health Hacks, and I'm so excited about today's show. We have an amazing super guest, Dr. Alan Christianson. He's a New York Times best-selling author, and he's written books about thyroid, adrenals, Hashimoto's, and you're not going to believe some of the things you're about to learn today. This episode is brought to you by Gainswave. Gainswave is a treatment done at your doctor's office to optimize erection quality without the needs of Viagra, Cialis. It's non-surgical, there's no needles, and it has an amazing success rate. To find a Gainswave provider, go to Gainswave.com. That's GAINSWAVE.com. Hello, this is Mark L. White with Health Hacks, and I'm so excited today to have my good friend, Dr. Alan Christianson. How are you, doctor?
Hey, Mark. Doing great. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Where are you out of, doctor?
I'm in North Phoenix right now. My practice is in Scottsdale, so Arizona.
Okay. Ever hike up Camelback there?
For sure. Yeah, I can actually see that out the window right now.
Yeah, I tried to hike up there, I think, over last summer, and it was freaking brutal. So we met a couple of years ago over, I think you were dressed as Richard Simmons at the Mindshare costume party.
We were to be those that we aspired to be when we were younger. Someone made a strong impression on me.
So you always wanted to grow up to be you always wanted to be Richard Simmons?
Something like that.
So you're an endocrinologist by trade. Mm-hmm. How did you get into functional medicine? Like, what was the aha moment there?
Funny thing, I'm a naturopathic endocrinologist. So yeah, there's a lineage that we have that goes back about 200 years in naturopathic medicine. And a lot of the things that are getting popularized nowadays, I'm really happy to see it. But it was, for me, going into medical school, I already had that conviction beforehand. I wanted to do general medicine, but also I knew about the power of lifestyle just from my personal life. So it was something that was a real deep calling.
When you say your personal life, was it the way you were raised? Was there something that happened to you during your life that said, I want to go down the natural path?
Yeah. I had complications from seizures as a child, very bad coordination, gained a lot of weight from that and had a period of being pretty depressed and, just couldn't really ever do sports or physical things. And finding some books in the library, reading them and making some plans and sticking with them, it changed my life. And it led me to realize that, I had seen doctors for my seizures and eventually for my obesity, and they struck me as well-intentioned, but it didn't really change things the way that I was hoping. And yet these simple steps, when I acted on them, were just profound. So it felt like this was something I wanted to help others with, and it became a real strong direction.
Excellent. Which book had the biggest profound change on you?
I'll date myself here, but it was Let's Be Well by Adele Davis. So this was the 70s, like way before internet or easy access to information. This was from the library.
It's like talking about the 70s, like the way we got our information. Let's Be Well was probably so out there.
Yeah.
Back then.
Yeah, she talked about whole grains, natural foods, eating vegetables, the importance of certain vitamins. It was pretty crazy stuff back in the day.
So then you went out and you became a naturopath, a naturopathic endocrinologist. How does that differ from a regular endocrinologist?
Yeah, so the training is really identical in a lot of ways, but there's more of an emphasis upon the relevance of lifestyle. So I'm a prescriber, I'm a diagnostician, I do all the regular things. I actually have a subspecialty as a thyroidologist. So biggest emphasis is on thyroid disease, but yeah, thyroid disease, blood sugar. And I do use some conventional approaches and a lot of conventional diagnostic procedures, but for me, I see lifestyle therapy as really just the first line, the first course of action, not so much a backup step.
Okay, when you were, you mentioned that you learned a few things growing up that really changed your life. What were those things?
So one of them was the sense that how your health played out was one of the biggest variables with the quality of your life. For me, I was like 12 years of age and I was ostracized from being an obese kid. It's now there's an idea of fat shaming. Back then there was not. That was just normal. That was just what you did. And yeah, it's kind of adolescence can be a tough time anyway, but it was just a real struggle. And being being able to become fit again and or for the first time really, and to lose weight, to be active, my social world changed, and I saw how profound that was and how I felt, and just enjoying physicality. And so I had this conviction that your health, if it wasn't there, your life could be, so much less fulfilling or so much less meaningful. And also that the main sources of health information, the doctors, didn't give me that. So there was something lacking, and there was something that information could do. And information that as a kid I could come across and I could figure out and I could act on. So it seemed like there was just so much available for people that must have been underappreciated and underutilized.
And you became somewhat of a big influencer too in that realm. I know that you've been practicing since the 1990s.
Yeah.
And you've written quite a few books. Metabolism Reset Diet.
It was the most recent one. And that was really about the conundrum people see, to where, many realize that if they want to lose weight, if they eat less, maybe they'll see some change, but they don't feel well. They're just hungry. They're too hungry, and they get tired, and they have brain fog. So they almost have to make a choice between having their weight go down or feeling in a way that they can actually live with. And the argument in the book is that it's not a matter of you lacking discipline or willpower. It's that your body is not able to convert fuel into energy effectively. And there's reasons why that happens, and it can change. It can be reversed for you. Not everyone has to have that struggle, and so you can go back to that state.
Well, why does that happen?
The short answer is that our livers can end up having more fuel stored and less ability to burn fuel. So our livers take whatever we eat, from fats to carbohydrates, even ketones, they all become the same thing inside your liver. And one compartment stores a thing called triglycerides, which is a kind of fat, and one stores glycogen, which is a kind of carbohydrate. And you need both, and you need certain ratios. What happens though is that if we're low in some nutrients, if there's some things off with our chemistry, we get too much of the triglyceride, and then we can't burn that because there's not enough of the glycogen. It's just like camping. If you want to burn a big log, you need some matches, you need some kindling. The log won't ignite itself. And it's the same way inside the liver. When you get too much of one thing, you can't burn anything. And now, whatever you ingest, it all has to get stored because nothing's getting burned. And that's why people often see the combination of just being too tired, but yet there's all this surplus energy that theoretically should be able to give them energy, but it's stuck. So that's the conundrum.
And then to release that energy, it's the energy's in our fat or in our ketones. How do we release the energy?
Well, the trick is to get rid of some of the toxic fat that's between the liver cells and then rebuild the glycogen again. And along the way, to hold on to healthy muscle tissue and support the liver reactions. So the Cliff's Notes of the book is that I put together a program that one can do in which you make up shakes at home, you use some quality protein ingredients, and you do a couple shakes a day in one good meal. And all the ingredients are ones that guide the liver through a reset process. They've done studies looking at people when they have what's called fatty liver syndrome, and there's just a crowding, one compartment crowds over on the other. And as much of a conundrum as that is, as badly as someone can feel and as slow as their metabolism is, the exciting thing is that the liver is a resilient organ. And in a matter of 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, it can change pretty completely and function very differently for someone. And the part that excites me the most about that is I'll hear someone come back and say, yeah, I did that metabolism reset diet many, many months ago. And now I'm doing kind of what I did beforehand, but it's working differently. Because I see a lot of people that they already know enough food rules and they're already trying really hard. They're eating organic food. They're cutting out these things they think are bad to cut out, but it's not working for them. And so it's so awesome to see a switch flipped almost to where afterward, then their efforts do work. They see some good shift in the body fat, and then they can maintain that with the things that didn't work in the past.
So if I'm coming to you and I'm complaining about brain fog and I'm starting to put weight around my midsection, is there a test to tell me what's going on with my liver?
There sure is. And a couple of things. The easiest thing that gives you a good clue about that is called the height to waist ratio. And it's just what it sounds like. So how tall someone is compared to the circumference around their belly button is one of the easiest low-tech predictors of liver function. And the number is 0.5. So if your waist is encroaching upon half of your height, here's an easy math example. So let's say a woman was 5 feet tall, so 5 times 12, so she's 60 inches. So if her waist was 30 inches or above, she would be past a safe threshold for her liver, that height to waist ratio. If she was under that by a decent margin, she would be quite a bit safer. That's one. There's also some blood markers.
Well, let me ask you, like, going
Sure.
back to that, though, guys are built differently. Like, my wife has a much skinnier belly. She's got bigger hips. Does that percentage also change for guys, or is it the same?
It's actually the same. So now hips, you brought in a really good point. So waist to hip ratio is also looked at for some different metrics of health. And that's a strong predictor of fertility problems for women if their waist and their hips are about the same. But height to waist ratio doesn't have a very big gender difference. At the extreme thin sides, it does. But in terms of healthy and unhealthy, pretty similar gender per gender.
Okay. And then what else? So they have brain fog. They come to you. You look at their height to weight ratio, you see that they got weight around their midsection. What do? Do you give them the diet and you hope for the best? Do you test them?
To be really precise, in our practice, most people that we see have thyroid disease or being managed for thyroid disease. And in many cases, those issues come up from someone just not being on the appropriate treatment or not being having the right diagnosis for their thyroid disease. So in many cases, that's the helpful part. But there are many circumstances to where even with good thyroid function, those symptoms do persist. So yes, the first steps medically are seeing if that's the culprit. There's an underappreciated condition called fatty liver syndrome. And the data suggests that even in people that have no obvious signs of liver disease, 40% of them may have an early version of that. So it's super, super common. And it's important because when it's there, it's something that can precede diabetes or heart disease or other chronic inflammatory conditions. So we want to make sure it's not just a matter of, yes, it's important to feel better and manage your weight, but we also make sure there's not, a bad event that's coming in the around the corner. There's some negative health event emerging. So we do steps to diagnose that properly. And then the treatment options can certainly include the diet if that's the main issue.
So tell me about the diet.
Yeah, the basic idea is that your liver needs high quality protein. So your liver is always stirring up, so to speak. It's breaking down various wastes and toxicants, and it's got to package them up with something to get rid of them. And that packaging up often involves essential amino acids. So a pitfall about like just fasting is that, yes, you could just not eat or cut your food intake down, and you may drop scale weight, but your liver's working even harder than normal, and it has fewer resources to carry out its tasks of detoxification. So we want to supply an adequate amount of high quality protein for the liver to work. Also, there's many plant ingredients. You hear about like cruciferous vegetables. There's another big group called the Apiaceae vegetables. That's things like parsley, parsnips, carrots. They're all in that family. And these categories help liver function. So the diet is built around a shake for breakfast and lunch and snacks available from vegetables, and then one good evening meal. And it's intentionally short term. It's a 4-week process. It's not to go on longer than that. And that allows the liver to rest, but still have the building blocks it needs to fix itself and repair.
So I just bought a Vitamix, and
That's
wake
awesome.
up. I love it. I never thought I'd pay $700 for a blender. I used to love the Ninja, but I would never change now. But I wake up, I throw some kale in there, I throw some spinach, I throw a little bit of everything. Is that the type of shakes we're talking about, or is there a special type of shake?
They're all great ingredients. So in the program, it's pretty specific as far as protein content. There's also a thing called resistant starch, which is a big unsung hero in the diet. So that's the compound that stabilizes blood sugar longer than anything else we've ever found. In studying diabetes and studying blood sugar disorders, the thought is always, how can we make blood sugar not fluctuate? And there's like nothing in the category of resistant starch for doing that. So when your blood sugar is stable for long periods of time, that's also part of the conditions necessary for the liver to really heal itself and help get metabolism back again. So we'll include some quality proteins. Someone just wrote in yesterday actually and was saying how their husband had had gout in the past. He had done the program, he dropped 20 pounds and was surprised he didn't have a gout flare. Now, many times when someone loses weight, they have things like gout show up or they'll have gallstones. I use plant protein in this program because it's more pH neutral, and that prevents people from having complications from weight loss. Kind of an odd paradox. When you lose weight, a lot of junk that's in storage has to circulate. So we do plant-based proteins, high amounts of resistant starch, and then also many compounds like some of the ones you mentioned, some great vegetables.
How about meat products? Good
Uh,
quality steaks, good quality chicken.
Yeah, so for sure, protein of all types is encouraged. And the amounts, the trick is that if you're having a lot of animal protein while you're losing weight, someone like this gentleman who wrote in, he could have had a gout flare because there's more of a pH challenge from a full amount of animal protein. So I still encourage, for those that are not vegetarian or vegan, a serving of animal protein in the evening, but 2 sources in the day from plant concentrated protein versions. That's more so during that reset phase. And again, so there's less of an acid burden during fast weight loss.
So as an endocrinologist, you do other hormones, I'm sure, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. How do you recommend a guy approaching 40s, 50s? Should he look at testosterone replacement therapy, if at all?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings. There certainly are many examples of someone who can see benefits from that. I'm honestly, there's a lot that I'm waiting to learn still from larger studies. We know that there are some applications that are good, but in terms of someone whose health is not too far off, we're not totally clear on the cardiovascular risk. I've got some concerns that way. And there's also some debates as to how much that can change through lifestyle. There's quite a bit of data saying that there's just your total testosterone, but there's also your bioavailable testosterone. And there's also your testosterone relative to cortisol, your stress hormones. And total testosterone may not change dramatically by lifestyle, but your bioavailable testosterone or your testosterone relative to stress hormones, that can change a ton. If someone already is doing appropriate amounts of exercise, getting adequate dietary protein, getting some high quality sleep, not lacking in certain micronutrients. If someone like that is severely low, that's one thing. But for many people, there's often some real low hanging fruit in those areas that can radically improve not just testosterone, but really all the androgens the body makes and how they're responding to those hormones.
So just lowering stress, I guess that would lower cortisol levels.
Well, yeah, sometimes easier said than done. There's a lot of ways to change the body's stress response, even if you don't live in a cave and have someone feeding you grapes. So even if life isn't perfect, you can improve how it all works.
So a guy like me with 3 teenage kids living in South Florida in this crazy lifestyle, how do we reduce stress?
Oh, you've got to go move to a cave and have someone feed you grapes. There's no other way.
I'm going to move out to Arizona and live on Camelback Mountain. That was very stress-free watching the sunrise.
No, so seriously, even if you can't change all the circumstances, you can change how they affect your system. I mentioned before the whole resistant starch thing. So your blood sugar is one of the big parts of the stress response. Cortisol is the main stress hormone we measure, and its main job is as a blood sugar regulating hormone. We call it a glucocorticoid. So the more erratic your blood sugar is, the more whatever else happens in life will harm you in a chemical sense. So by keeping your blood sugar stable, even if the teenagers do what teenagers do, there's not as much harm on your testosterone or on your other reparative pathways. So that's one small thing.
So really, it all comes down to diet. You stay away from stuff that spikes your glucagon levels, your glucose levels, makes you healthier.
Diet's huge. Lifestyle, timing, sleeping regularly. Kind of a funny paradox I want to throw out, just to be unexpected for some people. Definitely you want to avoid things that cause your blood sugar to spike and be too erratic. We used to think that meant just avoiding carbohydrate. Now we know that avoiding carbohydrate can be one of the best ways to disrupt your blood sugar, because glucose is non-negotiable. And you get glucose from your diet, or you get glucose by breaking down muscle tissue. And you've got to make stress hormone to do that. So just avoiding carbohydrate is not really the key to stabilizing blood sugar.
So something like the keto diet, something that you wouldn't recommend?
Well, it's recommended. There's some decent data for children with seizures that are not responsive to medications, but The tough thing is that my biggest clinical focus is treating thyroid disease. Kids don't normally get thyroid disease, but those who are treated with ketogenic diets for seizures, they get it about 27% of the time. And for many, it keeps lasting. And there's some reasons why we know that your body needs a certain amount of healthy insulin available for your thyroid hormones to work. When insulin is too low, your body thinks you're in a starvation mode and your thyroid shuts off. And for some, that's how thyroid disease starts. Many have had that come on from ketogenic diets. So the largest study looking at, if someone's thinking about just fat loss, for example, the largest controlled study comparing a ketogenic diet to a poor quality diet that was high in sugar, like 55% carbohydrate and 25% processed sugar, when it was in controlled settings and measured food amounts, there was more fat loss on the sugar diet than there was on the ketogenic diet. So it's not a first line therapy that I recommend. No,
What is the first line therapy?
it depends upon the condition, but in terms of the issues of fatty liver that I mentioned, then really what I outlined in the Metabolism Reset Diet, and that's something that's meant to be viewed as a reset, as a intentional short-term finite practice. You do this, you affect some change, and then afterwards, I give a lot of broad ideas about healthy diet, but most of them are not things that are unexpected. Eating a lot of variety of food categories, minimally processed foods, appropriate amounts of fiber, lots of plant food. So really the broad strokes like that can be effective when someone's body's working right again.
What was the most challenging patient you've ever had?
Oh, shoot. That's an awesome question. I've not really gotten before. Challenging, huh? I can think of different ways of answering that, challenging different ways. I've certainly had unexpected diagnosis or things not respond in the ways that I would thought. I guess one that pops to mind was a woman that had very erratic thyroid levels, and all the normal things didn't seem to be useful for, sadly, a lot longer than I would have wished. It was probably a good almost a year before she finally got on track. And oddly, it seemed to be that airborne allergies were the biggest driver of her unstable levels. So it was really when we screened and got her under appropriate treatment for airborne allergies that she turned around. But that was quite unusual.
And do you see a lot of things like Hashimoto's or?
Yeah, so I don't practice now. I've got 6 doctors that do. In our thyroid-focused practice, probably 95 to 7% of our patients have Hashimoto's. So that's the most common single diagnostic category that we treat.
Okay, and
Probably
that's
90%, probably 7% Graves. So yeah, Hashimoto's and then Graves are the 2 most common conditions.
so. What's describe like briefly for the lay guy? What is Hashimoto's?
Yeah, so Hiroko Hashimoto was a Japanese physician, and in 1907, he realized that most cases when the thyroid gland slowed down, it did so because the immune cells attacked it. They broke it up and left it unable to work. So we've named that condition after him. But that's the most common cause of thyroid dysfunction by far in the modern world.
And when somebody's got that, what symptoms are they going through?
Yeah, so thyroid disease can cause a lot of symptoms, and one hallmark is that they often have shifted over some time frame. So, for example, many can have fatigue from that, and someone could say, "Well, I've always been kind of tired." That may or may not be relevant. But when someone says, ever since last June, I have not had the energy that I normally have in the afternoon. There's a specific time shift. So, fatigue, weight struggles, unexplained hair loss, muscle pain, poor exercise tolerance. Also, we'll see just unexplained depression or anxiety. So those are some of the big ones. Sense of hoarseness, difficulty swallowing. Yeah.
What do you see like somebody comes to you and they just have no energy?
Sure. So usually those that have come to see our practice already have a diagnosis of thyroid disease. So our thought is, have they been properly diagnosed? Are they on the best treatment? But then are there other underlying conditions? So, 40% have some versions of anemia that can be relevant. Many can have sleep apnea. Many have atrophic autoimmune gastritis. They may not be absorbing some nutrients properly. Obesity itself is a cause of fatigue. People don't realize that, but just being heavier than one wishes to be, that by itself can cause many major symptoms like fatigue or depression or chronic pain, a lot of significant things. So the trick is finding what are the real reasons for that fatigue and then helping to address those.
Now, your practice in Arizona, you have 6 practitioners who work under you.
Mm-hmm.
That's very nice. How do you get your patients from all over? Is it a local practice? Do you do
We
a lot
have
of virtual work, a lot of in-person work? Tell me about that.
Yeah, for sure. We have restricted to the United States. We've had an international following for quite some time, but it's just harder because, we can't ship as readily internationally, and a lot of the same medications for those who need them are not available. So we focused on US patients, and we do treat from other states. We do treat via telemedicine. Probably about a third of our practice are people that do travel to see us or are local, and the remaining two-thirds are those that work with us virtually. Some specialties like plastic surgery wouldn't lend themselves well to telemedicine.
That'd be very hard to.
But endocrinology, we're testing levels. We're talking about your symptoms. We're managing your lifestyle. Those who are on medications are managing that. And it works fine over the distance.
Did you like T3, free T3, thyroid meds?
Yep, that's the stuff that we measure and treat.
We'll get great results off of that.
The big picture process, yes.
How about supplements? What supplements would you recommend for anybody?
Yeah. I'm rather light-handed in that regard. One thing that can be a problem for many with thyroid disease is excess supplementation, and especially excess exposure to iodine. So it's a real paradox, but your thyroid needs iodine, but a speck extra actually shuts it off. A big study was done a little over a year ago looking at 60 of the most popular multivitamins in the US, and almost they all have iodine. And this study not just reported what they had, but measured, like took the products in laboratory, analyzed them, and compared what was in the label to what was really in the pill. And not one of them contained the labeled amount of iodine, not a single one. Many had several times the safe upper limit of a daily dose. So that's a big concern about supplementation with thyroid disease.
Don't you find it amazing, though, how supplements, for whatever reason, are so unregulated? You never know what you're getting. How would somebody know what's a good supplement or not?
Well, yeah, and with thyroid disease, it's nice to have specific formulations. And to further your point, one study also showed that 20% of the time when people report to emergency rooms with acute liver damage, the cause is just taking too many supplements. Many supplements have a lot of ingredients, and these ingredients start to overlap and they can cause harm.
Yeah, and also when people come to see you, you have them do lab work, I guess, in their home, like where they are.
Yeah.
What labs should people be looking at as they age? Are there what are the biggest markers?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that shifts is going to be blood sugar metabolism. There's some close analysis of that. Cortisol metabolites, how the body manages the stress response. That's a big thing. Our focus, again, is thyroid disease. We screen quite thoroughly for that. Liver function. An odd thing is that there's testing the right stuff, but there's also knowing how to read the tests. And in the case of both thyroid disease and liver disease, there's just mountains of literature saying that you could be well within inside the normal range, but still have problems. And that doesn't mean that the testing is worthless, but it means that you can't just say normal or abnormal. You've got to have a lot of nuance to interpret those properly for the individuals.
I mean, ultimately, it's like getting people to feel healthy again.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So I know the Metabolism Reset Diet was your last book.
Yep.
What's next for you, doctor?
The next, I'm excited about this because my first two books were on thyroid disease, and those were coming up on a decade ago. And so I've got a new one coming out in January of 2021 on thyroid disease again. I mentioned about Dr. Hashimoto in 1907 and his work. Well, 2007, the question was, okay, a century has passed. What do we now know? So there's been tons of a real renaissance of re-investigating this whole thing and how lifestyle affects it. And there's a brand new story that I can't wait to bring out in another year.
Oh, that's really exciting. I want to thank you for your time. I really think what you're doing is amazing. I think it's amazing that you can help people. They don't have to come to Arizona. You can help anybody. I'm really excited about the stuff you're working on. How can somebody get in touch with you?
Easy thing, Dr. Christianson, Christianson. If you Google Alan Christianson, you'll come across me and also the clinic. And yeah, if there are anyone who struggled with thyroid issues, just know that you shouldn't compromise and you shouldn't accept feeling less than your best, because you really can. You can get your health back again. And if you need help along the way, our team's happy to provide that.
So if you're a chubby kid growing up and you are being bullied, there is hope. Dr. Alan Christianson, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, doctor.
Good to see you, Mark. Nice to get to hang out.
Take care.